pronounce your name, Dr. Jay Lund?
Yes, that's right.
Jay Lund? Lund. It's recording. It is recording. Okay. We should be crowded, but I'll try not to. Good afternoon, Dr. Jay Lund. How are you?
Just fine, thank you.
Fine. Welcome to Slingshot, and thank you so much to Slingshot Talk Show, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So, Dr. Lund, may I call you Jay?
Sure.
Yes. Okay. Let's start with the basics.
Agriculture in California is very profitable, very large, and it is almost entirely dependent upon irrigation. The climate here is very dry. There's essentially no precipitation during the growing season for agriculture. And so that means that all of the water that is used on crops does not come directly from rainfall. It comes from irrigation systems, groundwater, and surface water.
Okay. And so what is the balance, in terms of water supply?
California is one of the larger states in the country, and it has a very diverse geography. It has some very wet parts, some very dry parts, but they all do not have precipitation during the summertime, during the spring. So for all that area, for all the different kinds of agriculture we have in this very diverse state, it has to be supplied by surface water and groundwater from rivers, reservoirs, and groundwater pumping.
Okay, thank you. Now, can you describe your work developing and applying a large-scale optimization model for California's water supply?
So California is a very large and complex water system. It covers a very diverse state, as I said before, as well as some large urban water demands and environmental demands. It's a very complex system. It's operated by a lot of different agencies, but it really has to function as one system. So I was very interested in, could we represent that with a computer model across the entire state, across the range of water uses, across a range of wet years and dry years, and across a wide range of water supplies, from different kinds of reservoirs and groundwater basins, water reuse, and water conservation. And so we tried to do that on a computer model and also represent the economics of that system. And we were pretty successful.
But grossly put it, from someone who doesn't understand the geography and the management of the water supply, would you say that Southern California is drier than the northern portion of the state?
The southern part of California is drier, but even the northern part of California is fairly dry during the summertime. So we have to move water all around the state. Or I should say we do move water all around the state, and we move it between the wet season and the dry season. So we have to have storage in surface water and groundwater to move water in time between the wet season and the dry season, between wetter years and drier years, and we have to move water in space from the areas that have more water and less water use, and areas with more water use, and we use rivers and canals and aqueducts for that.
It sounds complicated, is it?
It is. We have thousands of miles of aqueducts, and we have hundreds of reservoirs, so as well as maybe 500 or so groundwater basins. So all of that together has to work as a system, and it's governed by lots of different people, and so to do the numbers on that was very useful I think for the state and for the students especially that worked on it.
And it sounds very expensive, is it? The whole system in order to operate?
Oh, the whole system is very expensive. It provides many billions of dollars of benefit every year and costs a few $1 billion per year to run.
Perfect, thank you. Could you share your experience with water supply and management projects outside California, such as your work on the Columbia River, Missouri River, and even Panama Canal?
Right, so California is not alone in having complex and large water systems. The Pacific Northwest has a very large hydropower system and flood control system on the Columbia River and its tributaries. The Missouri River system covers 11 states. It includes 11 states. It's in the middle of the country, and then it feeds into the Mississippi before it goes out to the Gulf of Mexico. Panama with the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal system is supplied by a system of reservoirs that all need to be coordinated and managed through a range of wet and dry conditions and traffic conditions that need to have the locks raise and lower over the year.
So your experience, did you move over there? Did you stay with working with the project, or you were back and forth between those states and California?
Well, I used to live up in the Pacific Northwest, so I have some direct knowledge of those. But most of those modeling projects are done in modeling land, so that's done on our computers here.
Perfect. And what is the outcome of these projects?
I think it gives a much better understanding, more coherent understanding, integrated understanding of how the system works. It's been very useful for the students that I work with and many of the public policy kinds of studies that we have done on what's the value of increasing the capacity of reservoirs, what's the value of water conservation and water markets, increasing some facilities, maybe changing the capacities of different aqueducts, what's the cost to the rest of the system for environmental flows in the rivers of California. What's the vulnerability to drought? If the climate changes, what does that do to the operation of the entire system?
It's a learning project.
Right. I mean, there's an infinite number of questions that you can get a better answer to with these kinds of models without the expense of actually trying it in the field.
Perfect. Thank you. And why is it difficult to California to capture and store all the water available during wet seasons?
It's easy to do in modeling land, just with computer models and math. But to do it in reality, you have to actually build things which costs a lot more money. So I can do a computer study for a few tens of thousands of dollars. But to look at those kind of changes in reality, or to build the infrastructure to do those kind of changes, might cost billions of dollars. So we want to do it. We want to try things out in a cheap way before we invest in many millions of dollars to do this, to do the studies of the details and the permitting, and then billions of dollars to make actual changes.
Perfect. And how does the location of California's main water sources compare to the locations of its major agricultural and urban areas?
California is it's a long state, north to south. Most of the water is available in the north, and most of the water uses are in the south and in the middle. So we need to move a lot of water in order for people to get their lawns watered and their crops watered. And we need to store it also between the wet season and the dry season.
Would you say that as of today the system is efficient? And if you could rate, would you say not efficient, medium efficiently, or very efficient?
California has one of the most successful water management systems in the world. So on a relative scale, I think relative to most other parts of the world, we do pretty well. However, we are far from perfect. And in an absolute sense, I often tell people we do a terrible job because we could always do better. I think that's an important attitude to have towards the system, because that's the only reason the system performs as well as it does today, because people in the past have said, well, we could do better. And so I think we could do better, and we need to do better. The world is changing, and we need to change the water system to go along with it. But that said, it's not like you want to throw it all out.
So what factors have made California a center for infrastructure and water innovation?
I think, first of all, necessity. If you look at the history of California water, when Europeans first moved here, they were used to getting rainfall throughout the summer to irrigate their crops. And they came here and they found a perfect climate for growing crops, wonderful soils, long growing seasons, and no precipitation during the summer. And so they had to build their own water supplies. Well, that required that farmers cooperate to build irrigation systems. because it's very expensive to build an irrigation system for your crops yourself, but to do it together with other farmers is much more tractable. So we had to really reinvent the water rights system for California to allow people to gather up and move water around. And we had to reinvent the institutions that manage water at the state level, from the local irrigation districts to the state water boards, and then now the statewide water systems that are state and federally owned.
Wow. And in what ways are California's and ancient Rome's water systems similar, especially regarding how they transport water over long distances?
Well, Rome transported water over what for them were long distances, but for us today would be relatively short distances. But for them it was very long, and they did it with canals. So they would build an aqueduct that would take water from a high place to a distant place that was at a lower elevation. So they used gravity to move the water. And we do that as much as we can here, because to pump water is expensive. If you try to lift up a 5-gallon bucket of water, you'll see it's very heavy. Now try to do that with acre-feet of water, up over mountains or any distance, and you'll find that it's very expensive on your body, and then in terms of energy if you pump it. We have the luxury of having pumps now that the Romans could never dream of. It's still expensive to do, but we can afford to do it a little bit better than the Romans could have. So we do pump quite a lot. We pump groundwater from hundreds of feet below the surface, and we pump water over lower mountain ranges to get from Central Valley to Los Angeles.
And what is the situation of the underground water in California, Dr. Jay?
Groundwater is the biggest form of storage that we have in California. It's really important for moving water from the wet season to the dry season, and from the wet years to dry years. When pumping technology became much better in the early 1900s, wells became very, very popular. And what has happened since that time, of over maybe 100 years of pumping, is the groundwater levels have been depleted. So the groundwater levels through most of the state have gone down quite a bit. In some parts of the state, we now recharge groundwater, and it's no longer going down, but it goes up and down between drought years and wet years. In some parts of the state, particularly the Tulare Basin down by Bakersfield, north of Los Angeles, they still have a major overdraft going on of several million acre-feet per year. And a lot of people are working on that, because the state has required that by the year 2040, there'll be no longer any long-term overdraft in those basins.
Groundwater, is it a finite resource or not?
Yes. All water resources are finite in some sense.
Do you have a scale of time, or should I worry about it?
No, we'll be okay this year. That's why they passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act in 2014, is because it was becoming clear that the water levels in some parts of the state were getting so low, groundwater levels were getting so low that there was going to be problems maintaining irrigation of permanent crops, high-valued permanent crops through droughts.
Perfect, thank you. And Doctor, how do materials and technologies used in ancient Roman water systems compare to those in modern California systems?
The major metal that was used in Roman systems was lead. And we've discovered that that's really not a good idea. And we have many more kinds of steel and iron and plastic pipes and all kinds of things, which are much better than having lead pipes for drinking water systems in particular. So I think the materials are much more available to us. We have a far better range of materials, and it's, we provide much larger water systems that way.
Perfect.
It's our populace is much healthier. It's supplied by much better quality water in much better quantity than it ever was in Roman times.
All right, thank you. And what are the main criticisms raised about President Trump's proposed water plan for California?
Well, politicians are always interested in trying to make the water system provide more water. Some are interested in providing more water for farmers or for cities or for the environment. Like I said, the system is really pretty good most of the time in most places for most purposes, but there will always be a high level of dissatisfaction among many water users. They would like to have more water overall and more water for their purposes at their times and places. So to some degree, I think we just have to tolerate a level of dissatisfaction, but we should always be trying to make it better.
Anyhow, President Trump explores the idea, and he talks about California having a giant faucet. So I don't know if it's a figure of speech when he uses it. It's not clear, or if he really meant it. But for the record, I would like to ask an expert. So what's your take on this?
I hope he means it as a figure of speech, because in fact there is no giant faucet. There are some important small faucets, perhaps, but most of them require pumping, so it's not as easy as turning a faucet. And we have a very complex system here with a lot of different users. And when you're trying to balance water uses across different users, and you're also trying to save water for drier years that we know are going to come in the future, you have to be a little careful about how you manage that resource.
So perhaps lack of knowledge and figure of speech, a combination of both.
I hope.
We hope so. So finally, is the claim that Governor Newsom is dumping water in the ocean an accurate description of California's water management practices, or does it simplify a more complex situation?
One of the great things about California water management is that it is so important that no one person has such absolute control over it. It's very distributed in its governance and its management, which means that we give an awful lot of thought, and maybe too much discussion at times, about the alternatives and the trade-offs. It does mean we do have some problems with governance and making decisions, but on the whole it keeps us from making erratic decisions that are not well considered.
Dr. Jay, what are your final remarks?
Well, for me, California has been a marvelous place to study water over the past 30-some years. We have all kinds of water problems, but fortunately we're also a relatively rich country, part of the world, so we have money and a fair amount of organization to try to address these problems. But we will always have water problems. We would like to make them better problems than what we have. Probably the biggest water problem that is we're the least organized to solve is environmental water problems for the native species, the salmon and the fish, wetlands and the like. That has probably been the water use sector that's been the most affected by water development, and where we're the farthest away from providing satisfactory solutions. For urban areas, we're doing rather well. We'd always like to do better. We always need to do better. For agriculture, they would like to have much more water. They're by far the biggest water user in the state, human water use in the state. But they also manage to find most of the water they need for their most valuable crops.
Central Valley farmers are not happy with the amount of water that they have, right?
That's right. They would always like to irrigate much more land than what they're able to do now. But the most valuable crops in the most valuable land tend to get most of the water that they want.
Would you say that they care about the environment enough to give some space to all projects, including environmental projects, or you think they are primarily seeking agricultural water for agricultural lands?
Well, farmers are basically business people, and if they're not acting like business people, they can't be farmers for very long. So they have to make it work for them economically. in some parts of California, and I would have to say the Sacramento Valley is one of those areas, most of the farmers are really pretty good about working with environmental interests. They have, some of it is part of their own interest as residents of the area, but I think they also realize that if the fish are doing poorly, there's going to be more interference with their water availability for agriculture.
Thank you so much. Very nice meeting you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.